how's it going? I'm IlaGolden and welcome to my vlog. Alright, in today's vlog I said I was going to talk about the breeds because it's a word that I keep bringing up and mentioning without any context. So I think it's something that I need to sort of clarify what I'm talking about. This very much goes into the whole idea of the Balance Council and Balance Law a little bit, because it is to do with what's referred to as the classification system, which is how an individual is identified within the multiverse, both in terms of how they might personally identify themselves and what they will use to identify themselves, and in terms of what the Balance Council will use to identify particular individuals so that they can get them not only down to what circle of realities they come from, but to the individual realm that that person has come from, and what makes that one different from a senkind from another reality. So that's kind of why the classification system is important within the context of the multiverse. So the basic idea is that everything that is humanoid is classed as being human, whether they're alien, whether they're demon or god, whether they are, fairy or whatever. They are identified as being human if they are humanoid shape, and that is to do with the idea of the four human elements, which is heart, mind, body and soul. And it is part of the archaic ideas in the archaic system that the Balance Council originally created, and is one of the things that a lot of people in the modern era are starting to rebel against and starting to disagree with, because it's kind of an old-fashioned way of thinking that everything is human. It equalizes. It's supposed to equalize everybody, and yet the system itself does everything it can to then put a hierarchy in it. And it's sort of like, well, why are you having this, this equalizing term, this word that's supposed to equalize us all, and yet are still content to classify us based on a hierarchy decided by people before we were even born. So it's one of the reasons why the classification system itself is quite controversial. It's useful in context to the Balance Council, and it's useful in context to anybody who's having to deal with people from different realities a lot. But in terms of the average everyday person in the multiverse, it's something that is very archaic. It's something that doesn't do what it's basically supposed to do, which is equalize everybody. So your breed type refers to the basic being you are when you're first born. This is to do with the powers that you are capable of, any traits that you are capable of, any additions that you might have, such as wings or tails or whatever else. That's what determines your breed, and that is something that you inherit. That's something that comes down to you from your parents. Sometimes from both, sometimes from just one. There are mixed breeds and there are mixed races. Anybody that has read Echo will know that that is a thing. So the idea is that you are classed by your basic form and function when it comes to your breed. But that's not necessarily the same as how we see race, because you could be a French person and a Chinese person and be the exact same breed, but you're classed as being a different race by how we see things. So yeah, that's basic breakdown of breed. And then you've got the classification system, which, as I said, is the bit that is the most controversial within the multiverse, because this is the bit that forms the hierarchy. So you've got the divine, which is exclusively higher beings and gods, and that also includes demons, I believe. Then you've got the dominant, which is only 3 breeds, and this is the bit that people take issue with, because it's the Odrayan, the Silconians, Macamacadians, also known as the Silconians for short, which is probably what I'll use from this point on, and standing, and that is to do with who set up the Balance Council to begin with. They're the ones who decided that they should be the dominant breeds, even though standing completely justifiable. The standing breed is probably the most prevalent breed in the multiverse. So fair enough, kudos, they are the dominant breed. But the Silconians only really exist within the Circle of 6, therefore are not a dominant breed, therefore are only really there because of who set the council up to begin with. Then the subculture is pretty much everything else that has come into breed existence through natural means, so through evolution, or through, through evolution. I should actually just say just through evolution, because the idea of evolution does exist within the multiverse. So, even the original breeds are evolved from something. Whether they know what that something is unimportant, but yeah, anything that's come into existence through natural evolution and natural selection is a subculture, apart from the ones which are classed as dominant. And then you've got the demi-humans, which is anything that has come into existence through artificial means, so any breeds that have been created or any breeds that have been modified, and any children they have after that are also counted as being demi-human, which again is one of the things that a lot take issue with within the multiverse. So those are the 4 breed classifications that fit within the terminology of human within the multiverse. And then you've also got the breed known as the Unrealm, which they are counted as being a breed type, but they are not counted as being human. The main reason for this is debate over whether or not they have a soul. Because even compared to the other sort of man-made breeds, they are the most artificial. Now I'll read you the description I've got in my multiverse canon for the Unrealm, which is any created beings who begin their existence already in their adult or full-grown state, do not require sleep, sustenance or air, are normally incapable of procreating and aging, do not die, just simply stop existing. Unrealms are normally created for a specific purpose and know this purpose. Their existence ends once their purpose is fulfilled. It is worth noting Unrealm is also a breed type. That's what I've got as my nice little description. I think the way of looking at Unrealms is almost being like synthetic humans, almost like being robots, but with fleshy parts instead of mechanical parts. They are complicated and they are interesting because of this sort of difference they have to everything else, and yet when you look at them they don't look that different. And again, it's one of the issues that people take with the classification system within the multiverse, is that how can you argue that this being which still lives, that still has an existence, that still has a life of its own, is not human, when something that's very similar in its creation and its origin, just because it grows up and requires sustenance and sleep and can breed, how is that, how can you justify one being human and the other not being human? That doesn't seem fair. Yes, you can see politics gets into this quite a lot. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why the whole idea of breeds and the classification system is important within the context of the multiverse, because it, as much as it establishes certain things and establishes somebody's identity in the same way that race and religion do for us, it also, because of the way the classification system currently works, puts emphasis on the wrong thing, which isn't necessarily modern society right now. I mean, just like they are trying to improve the situation, and they are trying to get to a point where things are thought of differently and things are thought of fairly and things are actually more equal for everybody. You know, it's art reflecting life, but more optimistically, maybe? I don't know. You can be the judge of that. So as I mentioned, your breed very much is to do with, you know, what powers and abilities and stuff that you have. In terms of how you can be magic-wise, there are certain sub-classifications. So you can be a single elementalist, so there's only like one magic type or magic element that you can use. You can be dual elementalist, where it's more. You can be what's referred to as there's a word. Combined singular, which is where you're using a corrupted form of two different elementals. You can be multi, where you can use anything between 3 and 7 of the different elementals. You can be full, where you can use all 8. Or you can go above that and use all 10 orders of power, so you can use light and dark as well. Or you can just use light, or you can just use dark. So your breed basically determines what kind of powers and how many of them you can use. And it also can have an effect on how powerful you can become. So there's also the power levels, which are limited, unlimited, and limitless. Where limited kind of refers to mortal capability. Unlimited kind of refers to sort of god and high being and demon capability very much. And limitless is not something you can be naturally. Or there are very, very few beings that are ever born naturally limitless, and it's usually because they've got so much else in their blood from so much crossbreeding in their ancestry that they are then capable of being born limitless. Usually somebody born limitless has become that way because their blood has been manipulated, things have been added to them, and basically it's not a natural process for them to become limitless. They've got that sort of either willingly or unwillingly thrust upon them. There are some advantages to being limitless, because there's no top to how powerful that you can become. You can learn every ability that there is. You can learn, every trait. You can develop, you can develop wings if that's what you really want. I don't think that's quite where that sentence was supposed to be going, but yeah, the general idea is being limitless opens up a world of possibilities to you, and once you've learned everything, you can then access certain abilities which are known as masteries, which are only available to people who are power limitless, and only once they've mastered every other power technique and whatever else in existence. And if anything appears whilst they're starting to learn the masteries, they have to stop learning the masteries and learn that technique before they can continue learning the masteries, and they have to start the masteries again from the beginning. Once they've finished learning all the masteries, it doesn't matter what appears, they'll have them all learned. But they have to start again every single time anything new appears if they haven't managed to get all the way through it. So being power limitless, yeah, as I said, has its advantages, but on the disadvantage, because it's not natural to most people, it does come with a lot of consequences, both mental and physical consequences. Being power limitless is not something that's particularly fun, or not something that most people should want to seek out, unless they genuinely have no idea how bad it could possibly be. But, to each his own. So I think at this point I will mention a little bit more specifically about certain breeds, because a lot of the rest of the information that I've got is stuff that is good canon wise and is great when I'm dealing with Balanced Council and how they deal with things, but I've given you what the general individual within multiverse needs to know, which is their breed, whether or not they care about their classification. Most don't. What powers they are capable of and how powerful they can become. That's the basic thing your individual in the multiverse really cares about, and that's all you really need to know. So I will spend some of this talking about some of the different breeds. I think, because I've mentioned them before in the Echo blog, you've got the enchanted breeds, which, as I mentioned, are your fairies, your imps, your nymphs, your pixies, your sprites, and all that kind of thing. And within their society, those classes sort of break down a little bit further. So you've got your fire pixies, you've got your water nymphs, you've got your your garden fairies, and your garden pixies, and whatever else. So even sort of within their own sort of classifications, there are further breakdowns of classifications. They're probably one of the most complicated breed systems when you actually sort of get into it and sort of nitpick your way through it a little bit, because they've got so many different varieties and so much going on. They've definitely got a very colourful society. And then that kind of reflects a little bit with the demon breeds, which again, there are a lot of them, but they don't break down quite as much. So, you know, whereas you've got like the imps, and you've got lots of different types of imps, you might have like, you know, your hunter demons, but that's it, they don't break down any further than that. Or you might have your water demon, but that's it doesn't break down any further than that. So you've got like the two sort of sides for demonstrating that. Whatever it is I'm trying to demonstrate. As you've got, you know, your more complex systems within different breeds, that they've got like their overarching title. So enchanted breed is an overarching title, and demon breeds are an overarching title, but then you've got your breakdowns within that. But not all breeds break down in that sort of way. So in terms of like the alien breeds, you've got the Atrixians, and they don't break down more than that. They are just the Atrixians. That is just like their overarching, you know, breed. And they might have races within their breed, which I haven't really done much to explore. I probably should at some point. That would be interesting. But yeah, they don't really break down much more than that. And likewise with some of the more traditional breeds, like I mentioned, the Odrayans, the Silconians, Mechanicalians, or the Silconians, and the Standings. The Standings definitely don't. They break down more in terms of race. They're probably the most prevalent for doing that, but they don't break down in more, you know, more detail like the enchanted breeds do. The Silconians is kind of arguable as to whether you can break them down a bit more. They don't break themselves down any more than that. But because of certain abilities that they have, you could break them down a little bit more than that. And likewise the Odrayans, you could technically break them down more than that, but they don't break themselves down more than that. And I think individual breed groups make the decision as to whether or not they need to be broken down more than that. And that's probably more a cultural thing than anything else. And then the classification system, separately to whatever decision they've made, might then make the decision to break them down more than that. I'm realising this is a more complicated topic than I thought. It's not so easy to talk about. I hope I've done okay. I hope you've got a basic idea of what I'm referring to when I'm referring to the breeds. I'm trying not to sort of go in too much detail into some of them, because some of them I think sort of do deserve their own separate little topics. Certainly the Odrayans and the Silconians, and definitely the Standing. They definitely need their own, either together or separately. We'll see. We'll see. And that's just because they have very complicated histories, and they're the most fleshed out of the breeds. for how I think of them and for the knowledge I've got for them and for what they've been involved with, yeah, they've definitely got the most that has been fleshed out, therefore they've got the most that can be talked about, which is why I don't want to go into too much detail with them and how they're connected to each other and this, that and the other. I'm not sure how much better I can do this. I think I've made it as clear as I'm going to at this point. I hope you've understood. I really hope you've understood. I hope I've come across as well as I can. I don't think I have, but fingers crossed that you've gotten the gist of what I'm trying to do here. I think it's one of those things I get much better on the page than I necessarily do talking about it. But hey ho, I chose the topic, so I've only got myself to blame. Right. So I think next time I would like to talk about 10 Orders of Power. Might delve a little bit into 10th Order whilst I'm talking about that, but I think I'd like to try to stick to the 10 Orders of Power, and what they are, and why they're the 10 Orders, as much as I can. I hope it'll be better than this one turned out to be. Not saying I did a bad job with this one. I think I found it a lot harder to sort of talk about than I thought I was going to. I'm hoping that I find the 10 Orders of Power a lot easier to talk about, partly because it is something I have talked about a little bit more with people before, so I'm a little bit more certain with how I can talk about it. So yeah, I think next time we'll delve into 10 Orders of Power. Let's get back to the fantasy part of this fantasy multiverse of mine, the magic and the fun bit. Alright, so hopefully this hasn't been as bad as I think it is. Hopefully you've gotten something out of it, even if it's just very basic, and I will